The story begins with Haruka Takumi heading home just before midnight after finishing work. Despite 2 years at the same job, the constant overtime was wearing him out. Glancing at the time, he remembered it had been about the same hour when he met that particular person in the middle of the night, so he hurried home to see her. When he got home, he heard someone scratching at the door and an excitement that made it seem she had been waiting just for him. It turned out to be his white dog that came running and jumped on him, and he was happy to see her. He also brought her favorite sausage for dinner. He named Pearlio, and at first, he chose the name picturing an athletic, strong male dog, but later learned the dog was a girl, and the memory was so fun he kept the name. He decided to make something for himself. Suddenly he felt dizzy and his head started to hurt. At first he thought it was an earthquake, but then he realized he was the one shaking and collapsed unconscious. Leo kept barking to try to wake him. Later, when he woke up, he heard her barking as he got up. A giant white wolf stood right in front of him and terrified him. It had to be a dream, because wolves that big didn't exist. It kept moving closer, and he became scared, sure it would eat him. In fact, it creates space. The sight shocked him. Looking closely into its eyes, he finally realized it was Leo, and the moment he said her name, her face lit up more, and she stared at him with those wide eyes. That confirmed she really was Leo, but he was still surprised by how much she'd grown. He couldn't even imagine that, but then she suddenly turned her head away from him for a moment. He kept wondering how much of a mystery she always was, even after he found her. She made gestures that seemed almost human, and sometimes she acted as if she understood exactly what he said. Now that she was so large, he wondered if it was all just a dream. Then Leo turned around and wanted him to ride her, which pleased him. However, he suggested they put off riding for now and first find out where they were. Moving deeper into the forest, it seemed to stretch on forever. Seeing no way out, he looked up at the sky. They realized they had to find a way out soon, or they would be in serious trouble. Thirst was already setting in, and he hoped to find a river or something, but a few moments later Leo heard that. She led him straight to a river, and he was surprised she knew about it. Feeling refreshed, he began drinking from the river. They paused by the river for a short while, and she rested her head on his lap. It felt strange, because she had once fit right into his lap, but now not even her head could fit there. Her head felt heavier than her entire august body, and Leo felt very embarrassed when he heard that. Putting that aside for now, he considered what to do next. He suddenly appeared in the middle of a forest without realizing it. He was pretty sure his lack of knowledge about surviving without fuel wouldn't help him there. One thing he noticed about the place was its very refreshing air. It had been a long time since he had been able to relax like this after a full day of work. He looked at Leo and apologized for recently neglecting her because of his work. Suddenly, Leo woke up and heard something coming toward them. He asked her what it was, and a large creature made of light appeared before them. It was an orc. Shocked, he remembered seeing this creature in video games before. Its presence made no sense. Leo suddenly charged at it. She pulled it out instantly. With the orc in her mouth, she approached him as if offering it. He asked if she meant for them to eat it, and she nodded. With no other options, he agreed, and she helped him through the process. Lighting a fire, she shoots a small fireball and chops meat off with her claws. All of it surprised him, and since waking in the forest, he had felt detached from reality, so he decided not to dwell on it and roll with it for now. They sat by the fire waiting for the meat to cook, and as soon as it was cooked, Leo drooled and immediately dug in. Takumi took a bite too and was surprised at how tasty it was, almost like pork. After they finished eating, he asked if she knew a way out of this forest. He met her confused look and realized it had been a little unreasonable to ask that. So he decided to follow the river and see where it would take them. Walking through the forest, he noticed Lee in a good mood, smiling broadly, so he asked what had made her so happy. Suddenly, they heard someone crying for help. They rush over to help that person, hoping they can get them out of the forest too. When they arrived, a woman was being attacked by a orc. Go-to-Kumi sent Leo to help her out. Once again, she defeated the orc in seconds and saved that woman. He praised her for a job well done. He then approached the woman and asked if she was all right. Still shocked and amazed, she watched what had just happened in front of her. On the other hand, to Kumi, he was surprised when he looked closely at her and saw how pretty she was, and he got lost in thought while she asked if something was wrong. He told her it was nothing. After he saved her from that orc, she thanked him and wondered whether the silver Fenrir was his familiar. Neither he nor Leo knew what she meant by that. He asked her what a familiar was, and she said they were monsters bound to his will. After hearing all those terms, he started to wonder if he had actually been arrested while playing a video game. Now it was all just a dream. Despite that, he still asked her to explain these so-called monsters, and she was shocked to find he did not even know what monsters were. After scratching that off, he said he knew about monsters, but she had also mentioned something about soldier fenders, so he wanted to know about that too. She replied that a silver fenderer was standing right behind him, though he had no idea what that meant. He decided to play along for now, confirmed that Leo was indeed a silver fenmer, and acted as if he already knew. It amazed her to see that even a silver fennel could be tamed by humans, because she had never imagined it. He asked her why they were so special. She said they were known as the strongest kind of monsters who refused to serve humans under any circumstances. He looked at Leo, trying to understand how she could be the strongest. She was just blushing at all those compliments. She added that silver fenders were said to be faster than the wind and could shoot fireballs from their mouths. She had claws that could shred anything, and people said nothing could withstand her fangs, while Takumi thought he had seen her do all those things. She told him the shine of a silver fenneler's fur symbolized their strength, and that her royal crest was a silver fenneler. Takumi introduced Leo to her, and as he petted her, he said it didn't matter to him whether she was a legendary silver Fenrir or not, because in the end she was his partner. She still couldn't understand how he had a silver fennel as his partner, so she asked who he was, and he said he was just an ordinary guy anyone could find. She did not believe that all of it claimed that no ordinary person could be a friend of Silver Fenrir. It was clear to her that he was a well-known, respected figure. Once again, he told her he wasn't anyone special and had no standing in society. She introduced herself to her as her Takumi. Trying to remember whether she had heard the name before, she couldn't place it, while repeating that he was nothing special. Then he asked for her name. Clare Liberty introduced herself gracefully and thanked her rescuers for pulling her from the jaws of death. Takumi couldn't stop thinking how beautiful she was when she introduced herself. Then he asked her what she was doing in this forest all by herself. She said she had been looking for herbs to make medicines, but she had wandered too far during her search. Then the words startled her and spooked her horse away. She asked what his story was and what he was doing there. That was something he wasn't too sure about. He told her he had woken up in the forest with no idea why or how, and had been that way ever since. She was quite surprised to find him wandering inside. Noticing he had no idea why he was in the forest, she wondered what could have caused it, and he wanted to find out too. He agreed to help when she asked him for a favor, which made her very happy. She thanked him with a bright smile. Later, they searched for the herb called capword. It turned out she just wanted his help finding the medicinal herbs, and with him, there was no reason to be afraid of the work. Takumi realized that based on the distinctive features of the capwort herb she had described, they might actually be looking for mugwort, and he remembered it grew by the river. They still couldn't find it. He got tired and sat down. They think they should take a break now. Suddenly he noticed a plant growing right beneath his hand and stared at it, confused. That plant was actually capwork, and it just appeared out of nowhere. In any case, he quickly told Clare he had found it. Several of them had grown there, and she leaned closer to inspect it. She confirmed it was the one they had been looking for. Grateful, she thanked him for all his help and said she only managed to find it because of him. She picked some and put it in her bag, then thanked him again for everything, and he said it wasn't necessary. Left with no choice, she had to find a way back after the orc scared off her horse, but she didn't know what to do. Suddenly Leo barked, sat down in front of them, and told them to just hop on. At first, Clare felt a little nervous. Still, Takumi helped her, and they both climbed on top of Leo. She was amazed to find she was riding a silver fennel. Takumi asked Leo if she had any idea where they were supposed to go, which she clearly did not. Clare guided them until they finally emerged from the forest. There was nothing on the plain as far as the eye could see. Nothing in rural Japan looked like this to him. This once again left him wondering exactly where he was. If this wasn't just a strange dream, he thought he might have been transported to another world. For now, he chose not to overthink it and to take things one step at a time. At last, they reached a mansion where the guards aimed their weapons, but Clare told them to stand down, and everyone was relieved to see she was unharmed. More importantly, they asked what the monster beside her was. She told him it was their esteemed guest and that they would show her proper courtesy, and they obeyed at once. She got down as the guards opened the gates. She welcomed Cume into her home. Seeing her in such an extravagant mansion simply stunned him. Suddenly, the butler Sebastian rushed outside. He was relieved to see her return safely, since he could not have faced her father if anything had happened to her, and she apologized for worrying him and asked how Taylora was doing. He told her she was still in bed with a high fever and that those medicines were vital for her recovery, and Kumi guessed that this explained why she had been searching for those medicinal herbs. Sebastian said the medicines they needed weren't in their mansion or sold in the nearby town, and Claire told him that was exactly why she had gone into the forest to look for them. An orc attacked her there, and she was sure she was going to die until Tukumi arrived and saved her life. Sebastian was shocked to hear that. Bowing deeply, he showed deep gratitude for saving the young lady and introduced himself as the Liberty family's butler. Takumi said they did not need to thank him and that they should be thanking Leo. Confused, Sebastian looked at her and wondered whether his familiar was actually a silver Fenrir. Seeing her claws cut through the orc with ease, Claire confirmed she was a silver Fenrir. Simply amazed, he could never have imagined seeing one in person, and she would understand exactly how he felt. Silver Fenders had become the kingdom's symbol because they were known to be indomitable, so the idea of anyone taming one as a familiar was unimaginable. Hume told them calling her tamed was a stretch since he'd only taken her a few years ago, so he preferred to call her his partner rather than his familiar. That left them both even more shocked. Claire said silver Fenders were known to treasure their pack and stay close to them, so it made no sense that he could have taken one in when their parents were likely nearby. Takumi, however, thought she had been a Maltese before coming here and that he had just seen her curled up in a cardboard box at the side of the road, abandoned by someone. Naturally, he couldn't explain that to them, and Sebastian just stared at him, wondering who he was. Claire said they could ask all the questions later. Talora was their priority right now, and Takumi had even found some capwort for her, which surprised Sebastian again. First, she wanted to welcome him properly, and he agreed. On behalf of all the Liberty State servants, he welcomed both Takumi and Leo into the mansion. While Takumi felt a little nervous because it was his first time being welcomed into a mansion this luxurious. As he entered, a line of servants stood waiting to welcome the young lady. He was stunned to see how many there were. Claire gave the cap work to Sebastian and she then thanked all the servants for their greetings and told them that the man and the Fenrir standing before them had saved her from grave danger, so she asked everyone to treat them properly. Two maids came forward, thanked him for saving their lady's life, and introduced themselves as Layla and Gelda, who would attend to his needs. After greeting them both, he noticed Zelda was clearly nervous in front of them. You wonder what he should do to make him comfortable. He felt he was in no position to speak because he was overwhelmed by everything happening around him. It was simply too loud for him. Claire told him she was going to check on her sister Clare. He told the two mates to make sure he received proper care. She went upstairs and he thought she was very kind, traveling all the way into the forest just to cure her sick sister. The maids then asked him to follow them to his room. He asked if his partner could come with them. Layla assured him there was plenty of room for both of them, and Gelda shouted that it was no problem. He followed them as they showed him his luxurious room. They offered to make him some tea and asked if his familiar wanted anything too, so he said water or milk would be fine for her. They left at once, even though he said there was no need to rush. He felt his Japanese instinct not to trouble others had surfaced. Seeing Leo asleep so comfortably, he felt sure the mansion was safe. Still, a pretty woman welcomed him into her mansion after he saved her life. It all felt like a fantasy, which made him even more convinced it was a product of a resting mind. When Leo woke up, he still couldn't believe how huge he had become, even after all this time. The maids returned with his tea. Gelda served Leo her milk, clearly afraid, so Takumi told Leo to thank her before drinking. She did this by barking at her, which initially frightened her. She soon relaxed and was even amazed. She told Kumi there was no need to be so afraid and that she was not going to bite her. Both of them began apologizing to him. Layla pointed at her and told her she should not treat their guests that way. He told Kumi he was not angry with her and could understand why she acted that way since Leo looks intimidating, while Layla said she found his familiar rather adorable. Despite his large size, his familiar spoke softly when thanking Jealous to avoid frightening her, which was quite adorable. Hume laughed and admitted that was a good point, and he felt Zelda was just like Leo, a cute girl. He apologized in advance if he was asking too much, but he only wanted her to stop being so afraid of Gelda, while Gelda was still stuck on him calling her cute. She quickly bowed to him and obeyed. Layla told him he had a real way with words, and he laughed, saying he only spoke his mind. Moments later, Claire entered his room and apologized for keeping him waiting. He asked how her sister was doing, and she said her condition hadn't really improved since she went into the forest. She believed the medicine they could make from the cap work he found would help her, and he hoped that was true too. Again, she thanked him for everything he had done for her, then asked him if he felt comfortable telling her exactly where he came from. She could already tell he wasn't an unsavory person, since he had rescued her from an orc and then helped her find Capworth. She truly owed him more than just her life, but one thing bothered her. He knew nothing about silver fenders even with one at his side as his partner, and he still asked her about monsters in general. Everyone here already knew those things, and they were common knowledge. He understood that her suspicion of him was natural. He still could not explain it. Seeing him lost in thought, she quickly apologized and reassured him there was no need to say anything that made him uncomfortable. They were just things she was curious about, nothing more. Speaking of curiosity, she added that she'd never really seen clothes like the ones he wore. He was a little surprised to find it had caught her eye too. She admitted that after everything, and since he had a silver Fenrir as a familiar, she wanted to learn more about him. He told her she probably would not really believe his story. She replied that she had seen how devoted Leo was to him, so no matter how outlandish his story might be, she would still believe him. As a result, you thanked them for trusting him. He agreed to tell him his story of how he ended up in that forest, and he told her that when he woke there. One thing stood out to him. Leo had grown much larger. Claire was confused and said silver fenders were supposed to be large, and he replied that he didn't know much about them because he wasn't familiar with them. Lee was meant to be a dog small enough to carry in his arms. She asked if he was really telling the truth, and he confirmed it, saying Leo was just an abandoned puppy he picked up and has raised ever since. That explained why he was so surprised when he saw her change in size and build. From what he'd seen, he guessed Leo might have become a silver Fenrir. Claire wanted to believe him, but she had never heard of an animal turning into a silver Fenrir like that. He then said he had one more thing to add. He had probably been scared, and she had no idea what that meant. He told her he came from a world that was completely different, where orcs and Fenars existed only as characters in stories. Hearing all that, she had no words. He knew it would be hard for her to believe him right away. He added that in his world, many stories tell of people transported to another world who are usually given some form of magical power. In this case, he guessed it was Leo who gained powers by transforming into his silver fennel. Once a small dog in her previous world, everything changed when she arrived here. He believed she had been given a special power, so she became a silver fennel. Claire stood stunned, speechless. Sebastian approached her to discuss this story. Takumi had already proven himself trustworthy, she told him, so she was inclined to believe what he had just said, and he did not argue further because she said so. He decided not to say anything on the matter, since she was an excellent judge of character, and the two maids agreed. She also thanked Kume for believing in her. With all that taken care of, he asked if he would like to stay here for now, since he didn't really have anywhere else to go. Also, her sister Taluro would like to thank him personally. He accepted her offer and thanked her. Meanwhile, she asked the maids and Sebastian to prepare a room for him right away. Once they left, he asked Claire if the medicine was ready, and she said it was not because they had to wait for the cap work to dry, so they expected it to be ready by midday tomorrow at the earliest. He asked if they even had enough cap work to start, and she said they do. 1 stack was enough to cure Tillera of her disease. Using all 5 would be excessive. At that moment, Leo sniffed the herbs, told her they were not her food, and Claire guessed she must be hungry. She had the chefs prepare something for her, and a welcome party was due for both of them. She asked what Lee would like to eat, and he replied by asking if this world had any sausages. She confirmed they do have sausages. Leo got so excited that she began hugging him. While working, he accidentally bumped the table, and the herbs fell. After catching them, he wondered how something like that could serve as a medicine. He spotted something and asked Claire to take a look at them. It was already dry, though it had seemed fresh just moments before, and she tried to figure out what could have caused such a rapid change. That didn't matter for now, so he suggested they see if it could be used to make the medicine. She agreed and hurried to Sebastian to give it to him. With her gone, only he and Leo remained. Their dinner would also have to wait for now. Still, he wondered what had happened to those herbs. By then the sun had set, and the two of them waited there. When Claire and Sebastian returned, Claire thanked Sebastian for what he had done to the herbs, since it let them make the medicine sooner and meant her sister Talera would soon be fine. Relieved, he prayed for her quick recovery. Sebastian approached him and asked whether it was true that the moment he touched the cap it turned dry. He said he only caught the herbs for a few seconds while they were falling, and by the time he went to put them back on the table, they had already dried. Given that, Claire and Sebastian think he may have a gift too. In this world, a gift was a blessing from the gods, and only one in a million newborns ever received one. So it was natural that gift holders in this kingdom were found only in past records. People blessed with a gift excelled in certain skills. For example, someone gifted in smithing could make swords that cut through anything. If someone received the gift of magic, they could cast spells easily and with more power than most people. No one had heard of magic that could dry plants, but they thought they might have that gift. Claire then brought up the stories he had told about people traveling to other worlds and wondered whether he had gained a special power like Leo. An ability meant only to dry plants seemed very strange. She guessed that was only one application of his ability and that he could do much more. Then she remembered a device that analyzes gifts and suggested they use it to find out what kind of gift he had. Meanwhile, he was still trying to understand everything and was surprised to find that such a useful machine also existed here. She suggested he have dinner first. He thanked her, admitted he could not wait much longer, and she felt the same because she was very hungry. After they finished eating, he praised them for the delicious meal. She was simply glad to see he liked it. Knowing some of their customs might seem odd to him, she assured him he could ask anything on his mind. Since she mentioned it, he reminded them about her earlier remarks on magic. Magic did not exist in the world he came from. This left them all stunned. She asked whether he was sure, and he said it only existed in stories, not in real life. Then she called Sebastian over and asked him to explain to him how magic worked. He became a little excited that he could talk about it. Takumi realized he was simply someone who loved explaining things. Sebastian told him magic was simple and relied on the mana inside a person's body. Every living being has mana inside, and without it, or if it runs out, they cannot live. Having mana didn't mean everyone could use magic. Chanting the correct incantation was the top priority, letting a person gather the mana inside their body, convert it, then unleash the kind of magic they want. Incantations could be similar across magic types. There were 4 elemental magics: fire, water, wind, and earth, each with its own incantation style and a power that varied with how long the incantation lasted. Some records even said casting large-scale magic required non-stop incantation for a full day and night. Takumi wanted to learn how to cast the simplest magic. Sebastian demonstrated it to him with fire elemental candle magic. He explained that the incantation converted his mana into fire, allowing him to produce a fickle, candle-like flame, a form of magic commonly used for domestic purposes. Hume was simply amazed to see that. Sebastian said that if he wanted to cast stronger magic, he would have to chant twice or even 3 times as long. However, during a fight with a monster, they could not be sure they would have time to cast that spell before being attacked. That's exactly why a method called voiceless incantations existed. That was meant to solve that difficulty. At that moment, someone knocked on the door. She rushed in, her hood pushed back tightly. Talera, her sister, looked perfectly fine now. Claire was really surprised to see her and asked if she was already cured, and the little girl said she was and felt better than ever. Relieved to see that, she turned to Kumi. She apologized to him for cutting into his conversation, and he told her it was completely fine. He was also relieved to see her sister get better. Talera asked her older sister who he was. She told her he was a very valued guest who saved her from an orc attack and found the herb that cured her. He told her his name. The young lady did the same. Although she felt fine now, Claire said she had only just recovered and should rest in bed, but she did not want to because she was very bored from being cooped up in her room for so long. Hume felt the same and agreed that resting didn't seem like an option when they were full of energy. Claire didn't know how to argue with them. It was clear she was genuinely happy to see her little sister doing so well now. She then noticed Leo sitting there and asked Claire where they had gotten the dog. She said she wasn't a dog, it was a silver fennel. Takumi introduced her to his partner, Leo, and she was surprised to learn he was a silver fenmer. When Leo approached, she warmed to her, reminding Takumi that she really loved playing with children. Talera looked at her elder sister and asked if she could really touch Takumi, and her sister said she could because Tukumi had said she was fond of children. Overjoyed, she began playing with Leo, going through one of her phases. Claire thanked him again for helping her sister. He said seeing her laugh and smile that made it all worthwhile. She also wanted to thank Leo, since Leo was the reason her sister was glowing the way she does now. Later, everyone left the room so he could rest for the night, and Layla said good night before leaving. At last he lay down on his bed, able to relax after such a bizarre day. When he looked at Leo, she had also fallen asleep. If this was a dream, it was a long one since he still had not woken up, and he guessed he might actually be in another world now. Lost in thought, he fell asleep before he even realized it. The next morning he heard Leo barking, but he didn't want to wake and asked her to let him rest a bit longer. Then he heard Clare say he didn't look like a morning person. Waking up, he found her and Talora standing there, waiting for him. Grateful, he greeted her and thanked her for giving him such an amazing place where he could get a good night's rest. She invited him to join her for breakfast, which was almost ready, and he accepted, appreciating the offer. She then told Tilur she would join them, but wanted to play with Leo a little longer. Takumi was pleased to see how much she liked his partner, and she nodded that she truly loved her. More importantly, she asked him not to be so formal or to call her lady. He could just use her name. Older than her and obeyed by a white Fenrir, he seemed remarkable, so she felt she should be the polite one rather than him. His agreement to do it made her really happy, and then her stomach started growling, showing she was hungry too. They both followed his lead and looked forward to a pleasant breakfast together, and he said he would join them after freshening up. After they left the room, he realized he didn't have a change of clothes and smelled a little. His beard was growing and needed shaving, and he doubted this world had razors, but he remembered some men were clean-shaven and decided to ask Sebastian about it. For now, he tightened his cleats and joined them for breakfast. They argued at the dining hall but still sat together and ate their meal. After finishing, he left. He called Sebastian and asked him if he could borrow a change of clothes, since he had none and wanted to shade his beard. Sebastian apologized for overlooking his basic needs and promised to have it sent to his room soon. Tilura finished her meal and asked Claire if she could go play with Leo for a while. Kyumi also said that Leo had finished her food. He asked Claire to play with Talura because Talura seemed to enjoy it. Claire didn't mind, and they went out to the garden. Before that, he asked her to watch Leo briefly while he went back to his room to get something, and she agreed. When he returned to his room, Layla was there with all the things he needed, hoping he would find them comfortable. She also handed him a knife to trim his facial hair. She left, telling him to call her if he needed anything, while he stood confused and unsure if he was supposed to use a knife as a razor. He had no other option, so he decided to use it even though he was not used to doing that. I have some small cuts that itch a lot. It even stunned the little one when he washed his face, but after a while it felt all right. Stepping into the garden, he joined the others. Claire, seeing him in new clothes and clean-shaven, was surprised by how fresh he looked, almost like a new person. He thanked her for the compliments, and she said the new clats suited him well. He thanked Sebastian for providing him with all of it, and he was simply glad he had been able to help him. After that, he was glad to see Talura running around full of energy, and Claire thanked him again for finding Capword in the forest because it had been very helpful. He admitted the credit wasn't all his since she left the mansion to collect the herbs, and Sebastian added that her adventure had nearly given him a heart attack, showing how worried he was. She understood his point and promised not to worry him so much next time. Takumi whispered that she meant she would still trouble him a little next time. She giggled, and Sebastian could clearly hear both of them. He asked me to be a little more serious with her in situations like this, then laughed it off and said it wasn't a big deal. He was convinced it was all part of her charm. That really caught her off guard. Hearing it from him, she blushed, thinking he had just called her charming. He noticed and asked if something was wrong, and she said it was nothing. Siege 6, later, and Clare left the mansion and rode off in a carriage. They were going into town to take care of his necessities, such as clothing, and Talura wanted to come along, but she had only recently recovered from her illness. Clare insisted on staying at the mansion. Now it was just the two of them on the road with a few guards, and he asked her if she was sure about this. She told him he didn't need to worry about anything, not even the expenses, because she would cover them. He bowed and thanked her for everything she was doing for him. Leo walked beside them and brought up the conversation they'd had the other day about gifts. He wondered if they could analyze the mine in the town they were heading to. Sebastian told him they could do that, and after he bought what he needed, they could see whether he had a gift, with Sebastian offering to guide him to the place. So they decided on the plan for the day while discussing it. Takumi still wanted to know exactly what a gift was. They had explained gifts were different kinds of abilities, but he could not find any explanation for why some people have them or what traits gifted people share. They said some people can use a gift right after birth, while others live their whole lives unaware they have gifts and only discover them later. He suggested research on gift holders is scarce because sample sizes are very small. Claire interrupted him and said she believed that, in the end, what matters is how someone chooses to use their gift. He raised no objection and fully agreed with her. Finally arriving in town, they found many people shocked to see a silver fennel walking around casually. Sebastian dropped them off and asked them to wait while he went ahead to park the carriage. As they waited for him, Takumi looked around and was surprised by how busy the town was. In his thoughts, Claire asked about the town of Ractos. He said he was surprised the town was already so crowded, even though they were still at the gate, and she completely understood how he felt. She explained that the town used to be Quinter, but it grew because it was the only route connecting other areas to the capital. Its proximity to the capital mattered, but the main reason it was the only route was that the surrounding land was forest or mountains. He asked if the forest he was in was the same one she was talking about, and she confirmed that it was. The forest covered the south and west of Ractos, while mountains rose to the north, and both areas were infested with monsters, so the only safe route was through the town, which is why it appeared so busy. Sebastian returned and suggested they check the shops for what Kumin needed, so they went to a market crowded with people. She told him it was the largest market in town. In fact, she often buys their ingredients and groceries here. Leo quickly spotted a stall selling sausages and began to drool, and when Takumi told her to control herself, she felt a little sad. Claire laughed at how much she loved her sausages, and he added that she loves them so much she could dash for them the moment she sees them. Given that, she asked the chefs to prepare a special sausage dish just for Leo for dinner, which made her very excited. Sebastian suggested they first take care of his clothes and pointed out a tailor just down the road. They went to the tailor's shop, and the tailor was delighted to see that Lady Clare herself had come. Horton was his name, and she told him she wanted him to tailor some clothes for Takumi. After hearing that, Takumi wondered if she really meant tailor-made plays. He told her it did not have to be tailor-made because he was fine with ready-made clothes, but she, on the other hand, and didn't know that ready-made cleats even existed. Sebastian Breather says most people buy pre-made cleats that roughly fit their size rather than getting them custom-fitted. It turned out this was the first time she had heard about it, since her whole life she had worn in tailor-made clothes, while Takumi stood there thinking she was truly a high-class noble. Then he asked Horton to guide him to the ready-made section. Claire said there was no reason for him to buy a pre-made clothes because she could buy him a tailored one instead. He couldn't shake the feeling that even buying ready-made clothes made him owe them a huge debt, so he refused to add to it by buying luxurious ones. Suddenly, she insisted he needed at least one tailor-made set, and he was shocked. Later, after they finished shopping, Hart told them his clothes would be ready within a week, and Kume thanked him for his service. After leaving the shop, they decided to pick up some of his belongings from the various parlors up ahead. Suddenly, a group of men approached and confronted them. They needed money, and because they were dressed up so nicely, the men assumed they were rich and demanded money from them. Two guards stepped forward and told them to stay back. However, the men asked them if they were sure they wanted to fight when the odds were 6-2. Meanwhile, Takumi stood there thinking their dialogue sounded cliched. Leo stepped forward too, and she stared straight at them. The men froze, unable to believe the size of the wolf before them, as Leo moved in slowly. Frustrated and desperate, the man drew. He tried to attack her with a knife, but she bit the blade and snapped it in half, leaving the men stunned. Takumi patted her and reminded her not to eat things that weren't food. The man dropped to his knees and asked Kumi and Claire what they should do with them now. She asked one of her guards to call the town guard here, and he obeyed at once. The second guard and Sebastian tied them all up. Claire said the town guards should have been more alert given how busy the town is. Takumi asked her whether people like them were common there. She said there were a few, and they usually targeted merchants or travelers. The men tried to break free from the ropes and threatened they'd get revenge, but Kume and Leo just stared and silenced them. The soldiers entered and apologized for their delayed response. They apologized to Claire in person for neglecting her welfare and assured her they would arrest the robbers without delay. After things settled down, quickly apologizing to Takumi, she said she hadn't meant to use his partner to intimidate those worthless thugs, and he told her it was completely fine because Leo had chosen to jump into the chaos herself. With that settled, they continued shopping. They were about to move when someone called to them. A girl asked if they could spare a moment. Curious, she asked whether that wolf was his familiar and whether Lady Clare was really with them, and both fell silent for a moment. He told her he actually preferred to call Leo his partner rather than a familiar. He confirmed it was Lady Clare, and when she heard this, she immediately knelt before them and thanked her for joining them while apologizing for not noticing her sooner. Clare told her she wasn't there on official business today. None of them needed to pay their respects to her like that. Takumi froze, unsure what she meant by all of them, and when he looked around he saw a whole crowd staring at her, which shocked him. They apologized in advance, but one of them still wanted to know more about the wolf. Clare looked at Takumi and asked if they should tell them, and he didn't mind. If she first asked the women what her name was and then introduced herself as Esmeralda. She watched them fight the thugs. Because the wolf had a shiny silver coat, large size, and could even shatter a sword with her bare fangs, she couldn't help thinking she was a silver fender. Clare said the guess was right, confirmed the wolf in front of them was a silver Fenrir, and reassured them they had nothing to fear from her. Everyone found that hard to believe and was clearly afraid of her. Takumi also said they didn't need to be so afraid, since she was really gentle at heart. Emerald insisted silver fenders were the fiercest creatures, and she refused to accept his claim that she was so docile. He told Leo to sit down, and she obeyed immediately, leaving everyone stunned. He told them again that she would not hurt anyone. The fact that she walked through this town without causing any trouble should be enough proof for them. He asked Esmeralda to come closer and pet Leo. They wanted to show her she was not as scary as they thought. While she rubbed her fur, Leo stayed still. Enjoying it, Emre was surprised to find she was genuinely calm. She also discovered her fur was very soft and had never imagined a silver fender's fur could feel this nice to the touch. Clare added that she was staying at her villa. Therefore, there was no reason to fear her at all, and Emmer and everyone bowed down. She apologized to them for jumping to conclusions without knowing the facts, felt bad that her fears had deterred him, and Kumia told her she did not need to apologize. Then he noticed other people looking at them, and they asked if they could pet her too. People formed a line to pet Leo, and it took a while for the crowd to disperse. Most importantly, Leo went along with it and made everyone happy. 2 hours later, they finally arrived in front of the finest general store one could find in Ractos, a place that was more than just a shop. The place looked more like a large house, which surprised him. Hain, the store owner, welcomed them and was delighted to see Clare had come. He asked them to follow him so they could find something they liked. Kumi was amazed as they explored the shop and saw how much there was, and it looked like they sold just about everything. At that moment, he noticed pocket watches that had no minute or second hands. Curious, he asked Clare about it, and it turns out seconds and minutes were completely alien to this world. The hour hand here goes up to 14 and wraps around twice, so a day lasted 28 hours. He wondered if their planet rotated more slowly, and if an hour there lasted a different amount of time than he was used to. In fact, the two worlds could differ fundamentally on what counts as an hour. While he was lost in thought, someone came up and asked if he had found anything interesting. He chose a pocket watch and a table clock. Look around a little longer to see if there was anything else interesting in there. He told himself to buy only essential items and not whatever he wanted. A few moments later, Sebastian asked whether he had found anything he liked. He showed him some accessories that caught his eye and that he thought would be perfect for Clare and Talura. He wanted to buy those as gifts for them, but he didn't have any money with him. He decided to hold that thought for now. Sebastian said he could just buy them with the reward money he got for saving the young woman, and he was surprised to learn there was a reward for that too. Sebastian told him the original plan was to buy the items he wanted with that reward money. Conflicted, the Kumi didn't know how to feel because Leo had actually been the one who saved them. Grateful as he was, he promised he would repay it someday. At that point, you finally finished shopping, and they left the store as they walked back. He said they'd spent a lot of time in town and guessed they still wouldn't get back to the mansion until sundown. At that moment, he remembered and asked whether they would analyze his gift in this town too. Clare had forgotten about that. Sebastian said that even though it was late, they could still go there if they wanted. Despite feeling a little nervous, Takumi decided they should go ahead. Later, after walking down Main Street and into an alley, they reached the establishment. A gray building had a black plaque with a white pentagram on it and looked eerie. They stepped inside, and a woman from the back told them not to keep an old lady waiting like that. Isabel welcomed them all. Sebastian apologized for being so late and said they had been held up by an incident. It did not bother her, and like everyone in town, she was glad to see Lady Clare again. Takumi was the only person there she didn't recognize, so she guessed he must be the one who wanted a man analysis. Confused at first, he then remembered Clare had explained that checking how much mana someone has also helps analyze their gift. He told her his name. Reassuring him that he did not need to be so shy around her, she asked him to touch the crystal ball. Once he sat, they began the process. The instant he touched the crystal ball, it began to glow, and Isabel was able to read his mana. She told him he had enough potential, and that if he trained hard, she believed he could become a skilled practitioner of the magical arts. Regarding his ability, she confirmed he had a gift. His gift was called herb cultivation. It allowed him to grow weeds, herbs, and other similar plants. Claire asked her to explain exactly how this gift worked. She replied that he could grow almost any plant that wasn't a crop. Claire wondered whether his gift included medicinal herbs. Isabel said it should work for that too, as long as the herb he was trying to grow was in its natural habitat. Claire told her that when they searched the forest for cap work, they could not find it anywhere, but the moment he sat on the ground, he found one right away. Isabel asked if she meant to suggest his gift had helped them find the herb, and she said that was her assumption. Then he confessed to Cume that there was one more thing he had not told her about that incident. That day, it only grew out of the ground in front of him after he began imagining what kind of plant a capwork might be. That fit well with Isabel's analysis. She was amazed to discover the unique gift he had. Claire said he could dry the cap word as soon as he touched them. Isabel explained that this was part of his gift as well. It allowed him to change a plant's state to match what he was looking for. Takumi then remembered thinking how great it would be if the plant dried up sooner, and that confirmed it was really his ability. Being able to grow any non-vegetable plant and have it ready whenever you want, Takumi wasn't sure whether it was incredibly convenient or just oddly niche and dull. In any case, he thanked Isabel for helping them figure out his gift. Then she gave him some advice. He said the gift was rare, something only a few people receive. How to use it was up to him. Whether it reaches its full potential depends on him, so he should think carefully before using it. Listening to her, he promised to remember and thought he really should carefully consider how to use it. Later that night, they returned to the mansion, and all the servants greeted them after their journey. Layla told them the dinner was ready to be served. Claire asked Kumi and Leo to join them for dinner after they finished putting their things in their room. Sheet 9. After they put all their things back in his room, he felt a little exhausted from a day of unexpected events in a brand new world. Looking at Leo, he praised her for staying calm and not lashing out when everyone in town tried to pat her, and after that everyone knew she was not scary at all. On top of that, she stopped the bad guys from hurting them, and he was very proud of her. Having her by his side, he was ready to face whatever this new world threw at him. At that moment, Layla entered his room to tell him that everyone was waiting for him in a dining room. He went with her. Later, once the meal was finished, he praised Chef Helena for the delicious meal, and she was pleased to hear it. Nothing meant more to a chef like her than hearing someone praise her cooking. She said goodbye, then took me aside and called Claire. After sharing his story the other day, he asked her to tell him more about herself. Her mind went completely blank for a second, and she didn't know what to say. She blushed and asked him what he meant and what she could possibly tell them. He admitted he still didn't know why she lived in such a large villa or why everyone in town seemed to respect her so much. Relieved, she realized what he meant and agreed it would be unfair if he was the only one with a story to tell. She told him why she and her little sister were living in this village. Long story short, it was mainly to separate them from their father. He showed them a lot of affection. Most days, their conversations kept circling back to marriage. She still remembered having to turn down 5 men in a single day, and it annoyed her. He also started pressuring Tilura to marry, even though she was only 10. Unable to stand it any longer, they left the main house. He realized that dealing with something like that almost every day would be very tiring when he heard him say it. She shouted that it was exactly right, then just like that. In the end, she spent half an hour venting about her father, while the maids and Sebastian stood there smiling as if they'd seen it before. When she finished, she apologized to him for wasting his time that way. He then asked his next question about why the townspeople seemed to respect her so much. He said even the town guard recognized her immediately. She said the reason was that the kingdom recognizes the Libert family as a line of dukes. Her father, the current head of the family, governed the surrounding territory, including the town of Ractos. He was very surprised to learn that she had found out. Clarify that from top to bottom, the noble hierarchy consisted of duke, marquis, margrave, count, viscount, and baron. Only the royal family outranked their line, meaning they were second only to the royal family. Stunned, Takumi realized where she really was and hurriedly apologized for being thoughtless and for treating a lady so casually, but she stopped him and asked him to simply keep talking to her as he had been doing. She assured him he could be even more relaxed with her, as he was with her little sister. Confused, he asked Sebastian if that was all right. He said that if young Lee herself insisted, he had no reason to argue. Because his familiar was a silver fennel, he said his standing was above even dukes, which surprised him again. Claire asked him if he still remembered what she had told him the day they met in the forest about the royal crest bearing a silver fender. The Libert family had its own crest, which she showed him. The crest featured a silver fendera bearing its teeth and fangs. The silver fenneler and the royal family's crest held a neutral pose, symbolizing the kingdom's indomitability. The Libert family crest displayed a silver fennel in a more aggressive stance, showing they could crush anyone if they chose. In the past, the Libert family formed a friendly bond with a silver fennel, and with its help they won many wars, so the kingdom took note and granted her family noble status. That's why the Libert family had kept honoring soldier Fenrirs for generations. Meanwhile, Takumi watched Leo relaxing with Talura and couldn't picture her as one of those battle-hardened soldiers who win wars. Claire explained that was why almost everyone knew about silver Fenrirs and how fierce they were, and it made sense to him. At that moment, Sebastian stepped forward and asked to speak with him privately, then took him aside. She asked him if he had prepared it, and at first he did not understand what she meant. Suddenly he realized what he meant. He gave Claire and Talura the gifts he had bought for them. Nervously, he told them that since they had helped him so much, he wanted to show his appreciation for all they had done for him. These gifts were his way of thanking them. He asked them to accept it, and both were surprised. Talura opened her present and found a necklace with a silver fennel pendant that looked just like Leo. She loved it and felt overjoyed. He showed Claire the gift he'd gotten for her, a flower pin, and she loved how beautiful it was. Grateful, she thanked him for the lovely gift. He was glad to see they both liked it. Quickly, she put that pin in her hair and asked how she looked. He told her she looked even more beautiful, and she blushed, her face turning bright red. Later, he read a book filled with information about various medicinal herbs. He decided to try growing one himself. 30 minutes earlier, he asked Claire for permission to use the garden for a while. She didn't mind. She wondered if he would play with Leo today too, and he said he wanted to test his gifts abilities and run some experiments. He wanted to know exactly which plants he could grow with his herb cultivation gift, so he could provide useful herbs for all of them. Because of that, she let him use the garden, and he was glad to hear it. He asked Sebastian whether the mansion had any books on medicinal herbs. Back in the present, he read about a low plant with thick, jagged leaves whose surface hid a jelly-like substance with healing properties. What surprised him most was that even though the book wasn't written in Japanese, he could still read it. On closer thought, he realized the low plant was quite similar to aloe vera. Its jelly-like fluid and sharp leaves made it easier for him to picture the plant when he compared it to one from his own world. Then he tried to use his gift to make it grow out of the ground. He activated his herb cultivation technique, and all at once, a bright light appeared under his hand, and just like that the plant grew before his eyes, leaving everyone amazed. They couldn't believe he had grown a short plant among all the others. Takumi asked Infuse and the others if there was something wrong with that. Sebastian asked him if he even knew what he had chosen to grow. He said he had just seen its entry in the book he gave him and noticed it looked similar to a plant from back home. Sebastian told him Lo was a medicinal plant that could help heal injuries. A small touch of the jelly inside it could greatly heal wounds. All that only made Kume realize that it really was just a lovarid twin. They sat in the garden, and Sebastian added that a low-S jelly could actually heal injuries instantly, which really shocked him. It couldn't treat severe wounds, but it could heal a bone-deep gash without leaving a scar. Takumi revised his original thought and realized it was nothing like a low vera. Sebastian said their native status was still unclear, and they were not known to grow in clusters, so they were considered very rare and could fetch high prices on the market. He had assumed any medicinal herb he grew would help them, but he never expected to grow something like this on his very first try. He asked Kumi how much a low was worth. He replied that because the one he had grown had more than 10 leaves, selling it would easily buy a whole house. That left him completely stunned. At that point, he started thinking about opening a store to sell many of them. Clare said that with his gift, he could open a store in no time and sell all kinds of plants. The real question was whether he truly wanted to open a store selling medicinal herbs. He admitted he wasn't certain yet, and for now, he just wanted a way to earn money because he couldn't stand the idea of freeloading on them. Sebastian advised against focusing only on growing lows because that would increase their supply. Their market value would drop sharply, and Clare agreed with him. She asked him to kill me if he would let them keep his loot in a villa for now, and he did not mind. She also assured him that if he ever decided to trade in medicinal herbs, she would help him. Has the freedom to have the family handle the logistics for him. He asked whether the Duke's people would sell and market his products, and she said yes. Inform him that the Libert family actually runs all kinds of businesses at home and abroad. The taxes they collected as local lord were only to pay for upkeep within the duchy and to fund the military for emergency mobilization. Fortunately, her family ran successful businesses for generations, so they maintained their wealth through profits. She suggested delegating the merchandising to the Libert family. This reassured potential customers about the quality and authenticity of his products because they were sold by a store affiliated with her family. She wouldn't stop him from opening and running his own shop. If he chose to work with them, she promised they would compensate him accordingly. At the same time, it was understandable that he might prefer owning the business and having more say rather than higher earnings. In the end, that was his choice. Takumi said it wasn't like that and that he had never dreamed of owning his own business. It wasn't very appealing to him. Because he lacked business sense at first, he turned to her and her family for help. Hearing that made her happy, but for now it was only an informal agreement between them. To make it official, she had to talk to her father and get his permission. She was sure he would flatly refuse. However, facing another conversation about getting married would really wear her out. She decided to handle the contract details with Takumi herself and meet her father afterward. Meanwhile, she could come up with a smooth way to deflect her father's demands. Later, after reading the book one more time, he experimented more with growing herbs, and the whole garden was turning into a field. One thing stood out to him, a leaf cultivation he had never seen, and that was not listed in the book he was reading, which confused him. After being taught that he could only grow what he imagined. Recalling Leo and Talera running around the garden, he thought how tiring it would be to join them, and wondered whether that thought led him to imagine something that could relieve his exhaustion. Unsure what the leaf did, he set it aside to think about later since it was lunchtime. Lee enjoyed her food as always, and the way she ate left her all dirty. He told her she was due for a bath after she finished up. She refused and started barking, and he argued the stains around her mouth would not come off with a napkin. After thanking Clare for the meal, he urged Leo to come with him for a bath. Laughing, she watched the two of them hack like that. When he finally got her into the bathroom, he saw her gloomy face and told her to get used to it, because starting today they will give her regular baths to keep her completely clean. She clearly did not like him washing her fur, but she pushed through and listened to him. Cleaning her, he was surprised at how dirty she'd become. It made sense because she'd been running through the forest for a while and hadn't had a chance to clean up. Then he cleaned her face too. It was covered in meat sauce, and he asked her to eat properly next time. When he finished, he asked Layla to help Leo drive, and she agreed. At last he could enjoy a bath by himself and felt very relaxed sitting in the oversized bathtub. She thought that although bathing Leo took much more effort now that Leo was so huge, it was still kind of fun. Afterward, he rejoined the others and thanked them for letting him use the bath. Clare praised him, saying he had done a good job, and Leo looked much fresher now. Tilura also loved how fluffy her fur had become, and he was glad to see it. Clare noted the silver fur was shining even more brightly now. One look at her and she knew why silver fenders obeyed no one. Then she asked Takumi if he remembered the forest where they met and told him that. Legend says that long ago the family's first head walked through that very forest. He asked whether that was the same head known to be close to a silver Fenrir, and she confirmed it. So she asked him to go with her into the depths of that forest one more time. The whole room fell silent when she said that. She said the first head had also met the silver fennel inside that forest. Takumi asked if she knew how the first head became friends with a silver fennel. That remained unknown to her, and was a mystery to this day. Neither the Albert family stories nor the documents covering half of the first head's life included any details about it. A record told them how the head came to be surrounded by fenders in that forest. That was when the silver Fenrir appeared before them. After that incident, the forest was named Fenrir Forest. Takumi looked confused and asked her if Fenrirers were different from silver Fenrirers. She explained there were many differences between the two. According to what she'd heard, regular fenders were smaller and not as fast as Lee. They remained far faster than humans, and their control of fire and ice magic made them especially dangerous. Although their fangs and claws were not as sharp as a silver Fenrir's, humans and similar creatures could not withstand them. To Kumi, he asked if packs of those fenders were in that forest. She said that since the first head's death, no one had seen any Fenrir, let alone this soldier Fenrir there. He started thinking about the whole situation, how he had ended up in that Fenrir forest out of nowhere, and how Leo, a cute little dog, had been turned into a silver Fenrir. In that same forest, someone connected to Clare by Blue also became friends with a silver fennel. It began to feel like fate itself had brought all this about. She added that for this exact reason people both feared and respected the forest and did not consider exploring its depths. He asked whether she meant that if they searched deeper, they might find more fenders or even silver ones. Excited, she told him she was thinking exactly the same thing. Sebastian cut them off with a shout and apologized ahead of time for speaking out of turn. Even with Takumi and Leo at his side, he still believed the depths of the Fenrir forest were far too dangerous to explore. The maids agreed and said that if it really was a den of Fenrirs, they could not return unharmed. Everyone asked her to reconsider and not go there. Understanding their point, she asked them to stay silent for a moment because she wanted Kumi's opinion, not theirs. They apologized to her as she responded to him. She asked him again if he would go with her to the forest. He wasn't sure what to say, and her expression made it clear she would do it anyway, with or without him. He asked to discuss it with Leo first, and she agreed. Then he called Leo over and led her into a corner. He explained everything to her, saying Claire wanted them to go with her into that forest, and asked how she felt about it. Her barking made him think she meant why not. Fearing for her, he thought a pack of fenders might attack them deep in the forest, and they had no way of knowing. It could even be a silver Fenrir like her. She showed no fear, and he pointed out that even ordinary fenders would be no match for her. If a silver one appeared in front of them, they would have to decide how to react. She was sure they would not attack on their own. They might even welcome them as friends. He warned there could be a large pack of them, and they'd also have to deal with other kinds of monsters, and she barked. She told him she could handle them all easily because the other monsters were even weaker than those fenders, and he was very surprised to see. He saw how well Versalio did on silver Fenrirs and the regular ones, but then he suddenly realized something. Surprised, he had no idea how the hell he could understand her so well now, and she looked confused too. With no explanation, he decided to put it aside for now and was happy that she felt confident about going to the forest with them. He returned to Claire and said they would gladly go with her to the forest, which made her very happy. Sebastian and the maids were shocked, however. He also called the nut and I asked them if they opposed Claire going into the forest because they were afraid something would happen to them. Sebastian admitted that it was exactly that. His only wish was that the lady of this house avoid any harm. He assured Kimi that the forest was perfectly safe as long as they stayed with Leo. Sebastian asked him whether he was sure about that. He said he already had because he had talked it over with her and she confirmed it. Layla suddenly interrupted and asked him whether he really meant he could understand what Lee said. He said it wasn't exactly like that. They had lived together for so long, he could almost tell what she meant. The three of them stood there, confused and unsure what to make of it. Leo began barking as if she wanted to tell them something, but they had no idea what it meant. Takumi translated for them and said she believed Fenrirers instinctively submit to silver Fenrirers, and even if they attacked by mistake, she could handle any number of them. Silver fenders posed no problem because they did not attack their own kin, so Claire was eager to head to the forest, and Sebastian, though still reluctant, did not argue further. She decided to start preparing for tomorrow so they could leave the following day. Takumi then asked why she was so fixated on finding out if there were silver fenders in that forest in the first place. Avoiding the question, she told him they would talk about it another day. The discussion had already dragged on, and Talera was nodding off. Before they left, she promised she would explain everything once they were in the forest because she did not want anyone, not even Sebastian, to hear about it. Back in his room with Leo, he still could not believe they were really going back to the forest. The memory of being trapped in that forest and facing orcs remained vivid, and he had no desire to go back. Because Claire wanted to check it out, he didn't mind since it seemed important to her, and he was also bothered by something about the forest. At that moment, Leo began sniffing the mysterious leaf, which he grew by cultivating herbs. He had never seen a leaf like that before because no one had ever described one to him, and he was thinking of looking it up in the book again. Suddenly, Leo ate the whole leaf. Panic overwhelmed him because he wasn't sure what that leaf would do to her. Still, Leo became playful with him when he saw her bright smile. Her tail wagged nonstop, and he noticed she had a burst of energy. He asked how she felt after she ate the leaf. She told him that all her tiredness had gone away, making her feel better than ever and even stronger. Hearing that, he realized he might have grown something insane without even knowing it. Expedition day had arrived, and downstairs he found Layla and Sebastian also ready to head into the forest. Feeling confused, he asked if they were joining him in Clare as well. Sebastian confirmed that they were, because although he was confident in him and Leo, he believed there was safety in numbers. Claire became angry and grew tired of him treating her like a child. Takumi soothed her, saying they only wanted what was best for her. Tillera also dropped by to say goodbye and wish them luck on their journey. They all climbed into the carriage and prepared to leave. Altakum grew uneasy as two women squeezed him. He felt embarrassed asking them to save some room for him. Sebastian stood outside laughing and said that's just how youth is. They left the mansion and were on their way when he asked him something. He asked Sebastian how long it would take them to get there, and Sebastian said it would take about 3 hours. Claire asked if there was a problem, and he said it was nothing serious because he had never ridden in a carriage for such a long time and felt a little worried. Curious, she wanted to know what kind of transportation people used in his world then. Explaining as simply as possible, he said it was a metal crate that could run on its own. Startled, she asked him how it could move by itself before a horse was hitched. Even after he said his world had no magic, Layla and Sebastian remained intrigued. He explained to them that the devices used liquid fuel for power. Burning the fuel produced the energy to move the crate. They wondered how a heavy metal crate could still move despite its weight. He did not know the exact answer because only the experts understood the theory behind it. He assured them they work perfectly. Claire was very surprised to hear that. He told her they didn't have many options and had to get creative with technology because they had no magic. At last they reached the forest and dismounted, since this was as far as they could go on horseback. Sebastian tied them up to a tree. Hume wondered what would happen to the horses as they went deep into the forest. One guard took responsibility to watch over them until they all returned from the expedition. Layla then asked him to help some of the guards gather branches, to give her time to make some lunch. He agreed with Leo. Gathering a bundle of branches to start a fire, he paused when she spoke. He tells the Bastion that Lee wanted to be the one to start the fire. He didn't mind at all and was eager to see the silver Fenrir's magic. Claire became a bit too excited when she finally saw a silver Fenrir casting a spell. Everyone stepped back, then Leo unleashed a blast of fire from her mouth. It left everyone stunned. Lighting the fire, she left Claire amazed as a silver fennel worked magic right before her eyes. Layla then got ready to make lunch for them and asked everyone to wait a moment. After they finished eating, Takumi praised Layla for the delicious meal. She appreciated that, and Claire suggested they move forward now. Sebastian called out and asked him to bring a sword. This was his first time holding a real sword. Sebastian said they should keep it with them as a precaution, since they didn't know what they might phase into the fort. He thanked him for it. Then, for some reason, Leo started sniffing like that and wondered what was going on in her mind. Now that everyone was ready to head out, they kept moving forward until they found a river. Kumi asked them if they would use a river as a checkpoint before going deeper, and they confirmed that was the plan. On the way, he noticed Leo was also in a good mood, singing along to the rhythm. He was simply happy to see that. Later, walking through the forest, Sebastian heard running water. This meant they were getting closer to the river. Claire, on the other hand, was already exhausted, and a guard steadied her while saying they would take a break soon. At that moment, Leo heard something. She began to grow as she looked toward the forest. He could not tell what she was doing. Suddenly, he saw something and warned Sebastian to stay on guard because they had an orc on their hands. The guards are Philip, Johanna, and Nicola. They quickly fell into formation, vowing no monster would lay a single finger on their lady, not on their watch. Takumi drew his sword too, feeling he should do something. When the orcs finally appeared, it turned out there were 3 of them, and everyone was shocked. The orcs charged straight at them. Before they could react, Leo leapt on them and took out all 3 of them alone in an instant. Everyone was stunned to see how quickly she defeated not 1 but 3 orcs attacking together. I was cued to go up to her and ask if she was all right. She sat down calmly, smiling at him as if nothing had happened. He was very proud of her and praised her for doing an outstanding job. The guards stood speechless. They felt no better than scarecrows in that fight, just standing on the sidelines while she did all their work. Sebastian realized that silver fenders were even stronger than he had thought. Clare approached Takumi and asked if Lee was saying something to him. He explained she meant the orcs were merely delicacies to her, which surprised them even more. Clare said even veteran fighters saw orcs as a serious threat. Seeing the guards' disbelief, Takumi decided not to rub it in and change the subject, suggesting they keep moving toward the river. He asked Leo to carry the orcs that were still intact so they could use them, and she was already doing it, holding an orc in her mouth while. By now, everyone else knew she was truly dependable. With her handling it, the guards volunteered to carry the torn limbs and did so the moment they picked them up. It looked a bit heavy for them, and they might tire from holding it the whole time. At that moment, he had an idea. He asked the 3 of them to wait a moment because he had something to give them. Pulling an herb from his pouch, he knew it looked a little off but still wanted them to try it because he thought it might help. Make it easier for them to carry the orc limbs. They followed his advice, ate the herbs, and were surprised to find they didn't taste as bad as they looked. Takumi was happy they liked the taste of the soft drink. Suddenly they felt their body grow lighter, and even the orc limb they were carrying felt as light as a feather. That made them even more motivated. Amazed, Clare asked him exactly what he had given them to eat, and he said it was the result of his trial and error while experimenting with herb cultivation. The hurt came from a pure coincidence, and she still had many questions for him about it. He told her they'd talk about it later. For now, they had to find the river. She felt a little disappointed, but agreed he was right. Eventually, they found the river, and Clare was relieved at last to see it. They could take a break while Lee ran straight towards it. She took a dip in the river and enjoyed floating around. Finally able to rest, Clare sat down while the others gathered supplies for camp. A few moments later, he went over to her and told her they had found a good campsite. He asked if she was feeling all right because she looked very tired, and she said she could still walk. He noticed she had pushed herself hard today. The group set up camp by the river for the day. While Sebastian helped her rest, the guards set up the tents. Layla was getting the orcs ready for cooking, and Cume offered to help her. Again, Leo approached him and said she wanted to be the one to butcher the meat. Later that night, he and Leo sat alone by the campfire. He wondered if Clare was really all right. Cut to a little earlier, after they finished eating. Sebastian volunteered to keep watch through the night, since monsters could attack them at any moment in the forest. Cume realized he had actually forgotten about that, since he never had to worry about it in his world. They then set the order for the night's watch. That was where Philip took the first watch. Nicola and Layla took the next one, and finally Sebastian and Johanna took theirs. Cume stopped him right there and asked when his shift was, and you replied that he did not need to worry about that. He'd never done anything like this before either. Still, he insisted on joining the night watch. He admitted he wasn't used to this, but Leo was still by his side. If he reassured him, they could leave it to the 2 of them. So Sebastian listened, assigned the first watch to him and Leo, and then everyone would follow the order he had highlighted. He also told them the watch would start at 10, and each shift would last 3 hours. Takumi looked at his pocket watch, which had a 14-hour dial, and realized that 3 hours after 10, his shift would end at 13:00. That was roughly the same as 11 p.m. to 2 a.m. in his world. Claire then called out to Sebastian and said she wanted to take a watch too. He asked her to get a good, proper night's sleep because she was already exhausted from traveling alone. If she still felt tired tomorrow, they would have no choice but to take her back home. She remained quiet. Takumi could tell from her face that she didn't want everyone else to do the work while she rested, but unfortunately she had to rest because she was already spent. Back in the present, sitting by the fire, he considered what he could do to help her. Just then he heard something coming out of the tent, checked his watch, and saw he still had 1 more hour. Claire approached him and thanked both him and Leo for keeping watch at night. Surprised to see her, he asked if she was having trouble resting. She replied that it wasn't quite right. Sitting between them, her smile told him she had something on her mind. At last, she told him there was something she'd been meaning to discuss with him for a while. She began by thanking him for bringing her to these woods. He reassured her there was no need because he wanted to come back too. She wanted to thank him properly, since in the end they had made it this far because of him. Taken aback, he asked if there was anything else she wanted to talk about. She hesitated at first, but then said it was about when she asked him to come with her to the woods. Sebastian ended up scolding her. He said Takumi agreed to accompany her because she asked him. Although they had just met, she asked him in a way that left him little choice and might have put his life at risk, so she felt terrible and apologized for putting him in that position. He assured her it wasn't a big deal and agreed, since he wasn't the kind of person to refuse someone who needed help, and he wanted to see the woods, so it worked out fine. Still, she couldn't shake the feeling that she had imposed it on him, and as a member of the Duke's household, she felt she should not have. He asked her whether there was any particular reason. She explained dukes were the highest-ranking nobles, very few could defy us, and they were strictly forbidden from issuing orders without good reason. Despite knowing this, she ordered him to come with her and brought shame on her family, leaving her unable to forgive herself. Looking at her, he just called Leo's name. She quickly rested her head on Claire's lap, leaving Claire surprised. He told her to pet Leo until she felt better, and she did, which brought a smile to her face. He was just glad to see her smile again. To address her feelings, he told her again that he didn't mind coming here at all. In fact, she never even ordered him to do that back then. Being asked for a favor by a woman that pretty wasn't a bad thing. When he said that, she grew embarrassed and blushed. Still, she asked him whether he was sure it was all right with him. He said if she really felt that bad about all this, she could tell him why she wanted to come to the woods, and after that they'd be even, so she laughed and agreed to explain everything to him. She admitted she wasn't really interested in the forest itself. She was actually interested in the silver fennel, one that truly belonged to these lands and was not Ice Cafe from his world. Meeting Leo also played a big part in her interest in finding one. When she was born, a rumor circulated among the servants in the house. Everyone believes she could be the reincarnation of the Liber family's first head. Their reason for believing that was because portraits of the first head hung all around the mansion. Her whole life was recorded in paintings, and one done just after her birth looked exactly like her. The first head was also a woman, and she fearlessly scattered the enemy on the battlefield. The Cume was surprised to learn the first head was a woman, and she added that as she grew up she began to resemble her more. The servants were certain she was her reincarnation and expected her to bring prosperity to the Liberty family name. He asked what her father thought about it, and she said her father did not believe any of it. He told her not to believe all of that she didn't have to act like the first head, and that she should live by her own beliefs. Hearing that she had such a wonderful father made Takumi happy. She agreed because only he had made it possible for her to grow up as herself. Still, she had no idea why. Whenever she heard anything about the silver Fenimers, her heart raced. Strange emotions rose inside her, and she set out to learn what they meant. She thought her only option was to go deeper into the woods, where people said the first head had found a silver fennel. He said there was no guarantee any silver fenders were inside, and she agreed. She still wanted to try looking for them. Worst case, they wouldn't find one and that would be it. He asked whether she would give up if they failed to find one here. That was all she could do, she said, because just entering these woods had already inconvenienced so many people. Besides, she saw no point in continuing to look for the silver fenders after this. If the search turned up nothing, she had already made a permit to take it as a sign and move on. Rumors that had spread everywhere swayed her, so she could not tell Sebastian and the others. Feeling sorry for her, he listened as she quickly apologized for sharing so much, but he said it wasn't necessary and that he was glad to hear what had been on her mind all this time. She thanked him for his kindness. They also asked him to keep this from the others. He promised not to tell anyone, and Leo agreed as well. A while later, Philip stepped outside. It was his turn to swap watches with him, and he told them both to rest for the night, especially Claire. If she didn't, Sebastian would give her an earful in the morning, so she laughed and agreed he was right. Just as she was about to go back, Philip called her out and told her not to get too hung up on the past, since he and Sebastian had served because of her. She asked him if he'd been eavesdropping on them. He pretended not to know what she meant, while Takumi just wondered if he'd said something weird. In any case, they decided to head back to the tent, and Philip wished them a good night. At that moment, Takumi discovered something in his bag. Rushing to Claire, he gave her some herbs and asked her to try eating them before resting. Those resting aids had been grown using his herb cultivation, so she could get a good night's sleep and wake up refreshed. She wanted to know more about his research, and he promised to explain whenever she asked, since it wasn't something he needed to hide from her anyway. Both returned to their tents. Just as he was about to go to sleep, Sebastian stood there and thanked him for keeping watch. It surprised him that the other man had been awake the whole time, so he asked whether he had been listening to everything, and though he hadn't realized those rumors had been upsetting her so much. He thanked Kumi for listening to her and letting her vent her worries. He was sure she would be feeling better now after speaking to him and Kumi, and he hoped so too. After that, they both went to bed. The next morning, they began their search. Now refreshed, everyone was ready to head out. To continue the search, Leo, Claire, Sebastian, and Takumi followed the river deeper into the woods. Philip and Nicola were going to stay at the campsite, and Layla and Johanna would watch the fire. Deeper in the forest grew very dense and it was quite dark, and Sebastian checked on Claire and she said she wasn't tired at all, unlike the other day. Thanking Akumi for his herbs, she said they had made her feel refreshed, and he was glad they had worked. Back to their search, the darkness made it hard to see where they were stepping. Sebastian had been trying to conserve his mana, but he had no real choice, so he used light magic to kill him. Sebastian formed a small ball of light that lit the area. Takumi watched in amazement, and Sebastian said it was simple. With practice, Takumi could do it too. He asked Sebastian to teach him some magic when they returned to the mansion, and Sebastian did not mind at all. Claire called from behind that, if he wanted to learn magic, she could teach him some too. Both of them stared at her. Sebastian reminded her he had taught her the fundamentals and was therefore better suited for the job, while she said she had studied it extensively and could teach him how to use magic. He said nothing more and left her to Kumian's care, with that said. After that, they searched for the silver fennel for a while, but found nothing that day. A couple more days passed with no progress. On the third night, they sat by the fire and talked about how 3 days had passed since they entered the woods and began the search, but they still hadn't found anything. They started to suspect there were no fenders in these woods. Given that, Claire told everyone that if they still didn't find anything tomorrow, they should give up and return to the mansion. Everyone was shocked and asked whether she was sure, and she said they had already done more than enough to indulge her selfish whims. As they grew more tired in the forest, the search became more dangerous, so they had to stop and avoid risking their lives. Everyone already knew what she and Takumi had talked about a few nights ago and only wanted to help ease her worries. They loved her that much and understood her point, so none of them really had anything to say. The next morning, while searching the woods, Takumi grew tired and asked Leo what they should do. If things kept going like this, they'd have to go home empty-handed, which he didn't want because helping Claire mattered to him. Then Leo took his hand and said something that gave him an idea. He had a gift for growing herbs. Believing this, he thought he could help everyone. Returning to the others, he said he had forgotten something important all this time. With his herb cultivation, he could help them recover from their fatigue, which would also make the search easier. Philip asked him if he meant there really was a herb that could help them with the search. Meanwhile, he was apologizing to them for not thinking of this sooner, even though they were almost out of time. He thanked Leo for the reminder. Setting that aside, he decided to see if his research had paid off. Focusing, he activated his herb cultivation skill, turning the whole area into a field of many different herbs. Philip was amazed because it was the first time he had seen his gift at work. Handing it to them, he asked them to eat it. As soon as they did, they all felt refreshed enough to start a training session immediately. Takumi was pleased it worked and asked them to try the others too. Before consuming them, he asked Sebastian to turn off his light spell. Confused, Sebastian reminded him they won't be able to see anything around them if he did that, but the man assured him they won't even need it. He gave them all the herbs, and the moment they ate them, something is changing inside Claire. Suddenly she could see deep into the words. They were surprised that the herds made everything look brighter to their eyes. They no longer needed a light and could even save their mana. That wasn't all, her hearing was better now too. He told them this was the effect of the second herd. He'd given them 2 herbs. One herb sharpened their eyesight so they could see clearly in dim light, and the other herb sharpened their hearing and awareness of their surroundings. If a fender had been nearby, they would have found it immediately. With their senses sharpened, she felt today might be the day they found what she had been searching for. They kept searching but found nothing, and after a while Sebastian told her the sun was about to set, and she began to lose hope. Suddenly, a loud roar filled the air. Leo started barking, and she told Takumi that monsters were fighting up ahead. She also mentioned one more thing that surprised him. He called Clare and told her they had finally found a Fenrir. Sebastian and Philip asked him if he was sure, since they still hadn't sensed it. His reply was that Leo always had sharp senses, and the herbs from earlier were helping her too. At the same time, in his mind, he still couldn't believe there was really a Fenrir nearby. Leo said the Fenrir was under attack and asked whether any monster would do that in these woods, and they guessed it might be a troll. Trolls were giants over 3 meters tall and were said to be weaker than a Fenrir, but many of them could change that. Leo confirmed they were trolls, and there were about 5 of them. Claire shouted that everyone must go rescue that Fenrir. Sebastian reminded her they could not fight 5 trolls, and she had no plan either. Leo barked as if calling her out, and she stepped forward, ready to head into that fight. Claire clenched her fist, bowed, and asked her to handle it. She agreed, and Kume told her to go ahead of them quickly. As everyone chased after her, he felt proud of Leo for refusing to abandon a fellow Fenrir. They finally reached her, and discovered Leo had already taken care of all the trolls. All that remained were their corpses. Leo seemed sad and asked her where the Fenrir was. She showed them the small fennel plant that had been damaged, and they were all shocked to see it lying on the ground. They were covered in blood, the little one was severely injured, and none of them knew what to do. Sebastian went to check on it, and when Claire asked how it looked, he told her. He told them they were a little too late getting here, and judging by his condition, he thought he did not have much time left. The news devastated her because they had finally found a Fenrir after all this time, and Leo also said something to Takumi. Although she wanted to save the little one's life, he did not know what to do. Claire asked Sebastian if there was any way to save its life, but he was unsure, and even if there were, he was not a doctor. Takumi then said he had once told him that he could heal wounds instantly, and wondered if they could use that. He replied that these wounds were beyond the help of a Lo, and stepped aside. Using Lo as a reference, he tried to think of an herb that could instantly heal a fatal wound. Using his herb cultivation skills, a new kind of plant appeared before them. He sliced off part of it and felt it might work. He applied that herb to the Fenrir's wounds. Suddenly it began to glow. The light was absorbed into its body and it started to breathe, leaving Sebastian completely stunned. He told everyone its breathing had now evened out and its wounds were fully healed. The small Fenrir had fully recovered. Takumi was relieved, and Claire and Leo leapt on him to thank him for saving its life, while Sebastian remained stunned to learn that a healing ability that could instantly cure even fatal wounds actually existed. Takumi laughed and said he'd been lucky since he wasn't sure it would work, and in the end, he was glad he'd saved its life. Sebastian quickly wrapped it in a blanket to keep it warm because it hadn't yet regained its strength. Based on its size, he guessed it was probably a pup, who accidentally got separated from its pack and was then attacked by the troll. Once its condition stabilized, he suggested they head back now. Claire wondered what would happen to it now. Lee was trying to say something too. Kume felt bad about feeling that way. He told everyone that Lee wanted to bring the little Fenrir back with them, and Claire agreed, shouting that they should definitely take it back. Sebastian tried to reason with her, warning that Fenrirs were ferocious beasts, but she insisted that leaving it there would cause it to be attacked again. He did not deny that it could very well happen, and Takumi agreed they should take it back with them. He asked if he still remembered the conversation he and Leo had before they entered this forest. He remembered they said that even if Fenrirs attacked, they would be fine with Leo nearby. Takumi added that she also said Fenrirs were always submissive to soldier Fenrirs, and she heard all of that. Finally, Sebastian agreed to take it back so they could keep an eye on it. Claire was overjoyed and thanked him. He warned that if it posed any threat to the mansion's inhabitants, they would treat it as hostile and eliminate it on the spot like any other monster. He insisted that Leo keep a close eye on it, and those were his conditions. They all agreed and decided to take it back to the campsite. Relieved, Claire was glad they had managed to get some results from the expedition. That confirmed Fenrirs really live in these woods. It was enough for her, so she lifted the little pup into her arms. She asked Leo whether it was okay for her to carry the Fenrir, and Leo did not mind at all. Walter Kume found it surprising to see Leo so worried about the Fenrir, but then he realized she probably felt connected to them because of her own past. Later that night, they returned to the campsite. Layla and Nicola were shocked to see what they had brought back. Claire introduced them to the baby Fenrir and explained that they had saved it when trolls attacked it in the woods, leaving them both completely stunned. Fenrir finally woke up, and the first thing it saw was Leo staring right at it, which freaked it out. Suddenly, it started shaking and turned away from him. Claire then calmed it and assured it that Lee would not harm them. She set it down slowly, and the two began talking. Later, while the girls cooked, neither could believe they were really going to bring home a Fenrir, even a young one, so they fed it. It immediately started eating it all. Humi sat alone under a tree, finally relaxing, and looked back at how strange things had been. First Leo turned into a silver Fenrir, then his herb cultivation gift, and now a Fenrir puppy. Being new to this world, he had hoped to take things easy, but from all this he realized that an easy life was not in store for him yet. The next day they headed back and were almost out of the woods. A guard stood there with the horses, relieved to see they had all returned safely. They took so long to come back that he asked if something had happened. Sebastian explained the opposite. Since they kept coming up empty-handed, they decided to extend their search. He also introduced him to the little Fenrod. They took it under their protection in the woods and told him not to worry because it was harmless. The guard stayed relaxed and asked no more questions. As they climbed into the wagon, Cume remembered how cramped the carriage was and how he had been squeezed between Layla and Claire before. They also had a pup now, so he asked both of them to take the carriage while he rode back on Leo. Suddenly, the little one jumped into his arms. It really seemed to want him to ride with them too. Given that, Lee approached Layla. He sat in front of her and gestured for her to hop on, then she asked Takumi if it was okay for her to ride Leo. It didn't bother him at all because Leo herself was fine with it. After that, they left the forest and headed back to the mansion. Inside the carriage, though, the femur seemed to enjoy itself, and the way it fit into such a small spot made me think it liked tight spaces. He suddenly remembered that Leo also loved curling up between the sofa legs. In that respect, the two were very similar. They finally got back to the mansion and were about to go through the gates. Leo suddenly stared into the distance. A loud howl escaped her, shocking everyone. The little one did the same, and they both started howling. When they stopped, Claire wondered exactly what they'd been doing. Sebastian was startled to hear a silver Fenrir's howl for the first time, and he felt something terrible had happened. That did not seem to be the case. Takumi remembered hearing that Fenrir are hauled together to communicate, so he figured the two might be talking to each other. Claire wondered what they were talking about, so he asked Leo directly what it was. She told him she was claiming the grounds around the mansion as her territory and said she would welcome any other Fenrir who wanted to join her pack. He asked her what the little one had said, and she replied that it had agreed to join her and was looking forward to it. He told Claire everything. Remembering that Fenrirs have a strong camaraderie, she guessed this might be some kind of ceremony for it. She realized it had already fallen on her, and she was glad it was friends with Leo. They entered the mansion and once again found all the servants lined up to welcome them home. No matter how many times I had that orgasm, it always felt different. Claire thanked everyone for welcoming them and asked them to keep their voices low. They apologized quickly to avoid waking the little Fenrir. At that moment, Telira ran up to them and welcomed them too. She saw the creature her sister was carrying and asked her what it was. When she heard it was a Fenrir pup, her eyes lit up with excitement. She absolutely loved how cute that little thing was. Claire asked her to stay quiet because the Fenrir had just recovered from a near-fatal wound and needed more rest. She apologized quickly, and Cume told her she didn't need to feel bad. It was much better now and would be fine in no time. Claire put it down somewhere to let it rest properly, while Zelda asked if he needed anything. He wanted to change first and then move on. He asked her to prepare some tea because he would be coming down to the drawing room, and she complied. Later, after freshening up, he went back downstairs. Zelda was right there, waiting with his tea. He praised her for making such a wonderful tea, and she appreciated it. Claire, with Talira and the little pup, joined him and thanked him for all he had done for them during the search in the woods. He thanked her for everything she had done, while Talira was just playing with two Fenrirs. Kimmy was surprised to see the little one wake so quickly and said it had actually woken when she returned to her room. Remembering something, she began to giggle, and he asked what had happened. She told him that because it was still asleep when they entered the mansion, it became very confused when it woke up and found itself indoors. Waking up, it looked around the room to find where it was. She laughed at how adorable it was. Putting that aside for now, she brought up the herbs he was growing and asked if he would share what he was testing. Agreeing to explain to her, he hesitated, unsure how to begin. Suddenly he felt a sensation in his body, vision blurred, and he could not keep his thoughts straight. He froze in place, and although he could hear their voices asking what was happening to him, he could not speak at all. The feeling was the same as when he had been teleported to this world. Eventually, he woke up. Leo, Claire, and Sebastian stood in front of him, relieved to see he was awake. It turned out he was still in the same world, and lying on the cot, he asked them what had happened to him. They said he had suddenly fainted while they were in the drawing room. He finally remembered he was in the middle of a conversation with her when his head began to spin. He joked that at least he got a good rest after that adventure in the forest. It made her laugh, and she was relieved he was okay. Suddenly Leo jumped on him, and she began licking him aggressively while he kept telling her to stop. Claire told him Leo had been really worried for him and had not left his side, but now that he was awake, he was fighting for his life to protect himself from her leaking. Everyone laughed, convinced the two of them were really two peas in a pod. Later, he and Claire sat together again for tea, and she asked if he still remembered what happened before he fainted. He remembered they'd just returned from the woods and were talking about something. Suddenly his vision blurred and then gradually went dark. It must have been terrifying to be unable to see anything, so she felt sorry for him. Sebastian suggested his gift might have caused him to faint like that. He warned him there were old records about the gifts saying overusing a gift could make the bearer lose consciousness, so they had to be careful. Some used their gifts constantly without any such effects, so it remained unclear whether the difference was due to the gift or the user. He explained he had other powers besides mana that let him use his gift, and believed he had simply run out of power and collapsed. Perplexed, Takumi asked him what other powers he had. You said they still could not confirm it, because so few people could use gifts that there were not enough people to do the research. He guessed it was because he had used his herb cultivation so heavily in the woods. However, he said he fainted only after he got home. Sebastian said that, according to the records, how long the gift lasted varied with its ability and how it was used. The longer it was used, the greater the burden on the user, and the shorter it was used, the smaller the burden. Although all of this was mentioned in previous accounts, he also made clear that all of this was only a hypothesis. It is likely his herb cultivation does not stop once the herbs are grown. He pointed out that the herb he had placed on Fenrir's wounds began to glow, which does not occur with any ordinary low. Now that it had been mentioned, Takumi thought it was strange too. Sebastian also told him that the moment he fainted, the Fenrir he had saved went limp and stopped moving, which surprised him. Luckily, its wounds had already healed, and he woke up quickly, so, considering all of that, Sebastian guessed the herb he made to save, it didn't instantly heal all its wounds. It only made the Fenrir appear fully healed and strong, while he was actually healing it slowly over time. He kept sharing the power of his gift with it, until he ran out of energy in the drawing room and fainted. Still, it was only his theory, and he left it at that. Claire suggested that if that was true, he should avoid using his herb cultivation gift for a while. He said that if the theory was correct, he only needed to avoid cultivating anything with a continuous effect, and then his gift would be quite helpful. She agreed it might be true, but asked him to promise he wouldn't push himself too far. He nodded and thanked her for her concern. Once that was settled, she said she was still waiting to hear the results of his experiments with his gift. Finally, he remembered that this was the moment he suddenly fainted. He told her it began when he first experimented with cultivating his herd. At that time, he accidentally created a leaf not recorded in any of the books. He left it on the desk in his room and did nothing with it, but later that night Leo ate the leaf. As soon as she did, she suddenly became very energetic and said she felt better than ever. Claire remembered he had also given him something like that in the forest. He confirmed that's where he got the idea. After that, he realized something. Earlier, while cultivating herbs, he imagined only their appearance, not their effects. He had no idea what the herbs he had grown earlier would look like. Sebastian was shocked and asked if he meant that he only had to wish a plant into existence and it would appear in front of him. If it was an herb and he nodded, that appears to be the conclusion of his experiments. Tillera was amazed to hear that. Sebastian still warned him not to use them often, because they could hurt him too, as happened today. Agreeing with him, he promised to think it over. He was also going to grow herbs they could sell, and when Claire heard that, she asked if he meant what she thought. Bowing to her, he thanked her for the earlier proposal to run a business. He decided he wanted to go into the herb seller's shop with her, as long as he was not in danger of fainting again. She was overjoyed and thanked him on behalf of the entire Joukwell household. She quickly told Sebastian they had to tell her father about it and ask his permission, however. He also reminded her what would happen when she spoke to him. She needed to think ahead about how she would turn down the additional marriage proposals he would throw at her. She didn't care about that for now and just wanted to celebrate this special occasion. Sebastian joined in, while Takumi only watched them. They thought they were a little too excited about this business deal. Tilura then pointed out they still need to pick a name for the little Fenrir. Clare agreed that it was odd that it didn't have a name. Takumi added that it could make the Fenrir feel closer to them. First, they had to find out whether it was male or female. She picked it up and asked Sebastian to take a look. He confirmed it was a female, just like Leo. Clare petted her and thought about which name would suit her best. Sebastian suggested they call her Slimeson. She turned him down outright because the name didn't suit a girl. His mood turned gloomy. Then Clare came to mind, a name she thought was perfect. She wanted to name her Sherry, a name that meant someone who was loved.